Tanse Tawau. Welcome everyone to the Decolonizing the Narrative session for August 2022. I wanted to take time to introduce myself. I'm Janine Windolph. I'm the Acting Director of Indigenous Arts. I've been working at the Banff Centre for almost 3 years now, and I'm happy to be able to help host today's session. A little bit about my background is I was originally born and raised in La Ronge, Saskatchewan, Treaty 6 area. My family and my maternal roots are from Waswanipi Cree Nation, so I'm part of the James Bay Agreement, and I have a home in Treaty 4 in Regina, Saskatchewan. But today I work and play and am joining from Treaty 7 area in the Banff area known as Minerpa, which translates as waterfalls. I wanted to do a land acknowledgement to share that we are honoring and acknowledging the Stoney Nakoda, who are comprised of the Bear Spa, the Chiniki, the Wesley First Nations. Also want to acknowledge the Tutsina First Nation, the Blackfoot Confederacy, which is comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, and also home to the Shuswap, the Tanaka, and Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. And so I'd also encourage you to acknowledge where you're joining from and feel free to put that in the chat. Normally, that's where you would have found me is chat moderating, but definitely want to know where everyone is joining from. And so I'm happy to be able to welcome Muriel Miguel, who will be presenting and with us tomorrow for more conversation. I had a wonderful conversation with Muriel last week, and so I'm really excited for the time that we're going to be sharing on screen with everyone today. And also to acknowledge that Muriel Miguel had her 85th birthday. And so happy birthday, Muriel, and welcome to the Banff Centre online digitally. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Muriel, and yeah, to present and share.
New 80. Hello. Years ago, I was, it was an interview, my daughter and we were talking about theater, and I was very excited because it was mostly a Native audience. I was so excited I didn't do the protocol that we always do. And at the end of the talk, someone said, "Well, who are you?" And I was so embarrassed. I didn't tell them anything about myself. And from that point, I always promised myself that I would give you everything of who I am. So here goes. New 80. Hello. My name's Muriel Miguel, Bright Sun, and Waganadili. I am from Kuna, it's off the coast of Panama. There's a sovereign nation. And I'm Rappahannock from Virginia. So, Virginia, Rappahannock, Pocahontas. We have someone called Walt Disney did a show on Pocahontas. So thanks, Walt. But that's who I am. My mother and father from two different nations met in Brooklyn. They fell in love in Brooklyn. They married in Brooklyn. They had their family in Brooklyn. So I was born and raised in Brooklyn. I am truly, truly a city Indian. When I was growing up, it was amazing because in our house, it was like there were all these different people that came from all over the country. And it was a time when in the States where people were getting into trouble doing ceremonies. And a lot of people came to the East Coast to, I think it was to share, many of them. And when they shared everything. They shared their stories, they shared their songs, they shared their dances. And we were very young. There were a number of us. We were very young. We were like sponges. We absorbed everything. And it was it was wonderful. It was wonderful because there we were, and we met all these people from all over. And that picture, did we have the picture on already? The powwow picture. The powwow picture is pictures, yeah. That I there I am, right in the middle with a white outfit on my knees there. I must have been about 11. And my mother and my father and my aunt and my sisters are all in that picture. And sometimes when we look at this, uh, people will say, "Oh, that's my uncle," or "Oh, that's my grandfather or grandmother," because people really came from all over, and especially all over the city, to see to have a powwow. And this was a powwow in a big, big place, and uh, and it was pretty wonderful. I remember the feeling I had. They went around. They said we had to sing the Star Spangled Banner, and my sister was the singer, my sister Gloria, and she ran around getting the words of the Star Spangled Banner. And when she started singing, the door opened, and this white horse came out, and there was this man with a full headdress on and a red satin shirt and with an American flag, and he went all around the arena. And I remember thinking, wow, am I glad? I'm so lucky to be Native. That's a long time ago. If I was 11 there, I'm 85 now, so that was 11 there. So I grew up in New York City, and I grew up with many people that came from Canada. Many iron workers came down, and people were coming from across the nation here. And many people were coming up from Mexico. And I think our parents were worried that we would lose the culture. And with that losing the culture, they were so happy when these people came and taught us songs and dances. And we started a group called the Little Eagles. We were all like from 11 to, we were really teenagers. We were from 11 to 15 or something like that. And we we involved our parents, and all the parents were so excited about that. And then we would go on shows with our families and so on. And one day in social studies, the history teacher said to me, or said not to me, but to the whole class, but Native culture is dead. There's no more Native culture. And I was so upset. I stood up and I said, "Well, I'm alive." And I started to talk about it. And this man was very, very nasty. And I had a bandage on my arm, and he called me up and he looked at the bandage. He says, "What's that? What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Nothing. I had a scrape." And he said, "It's dirty." And I remember feeling, this man wants me to feel bad. I could feel it. He wants to put me down. And he didn't do a thing to me. But I heard in other schools around the city that kids were getting in trouble because they were reacting to someone saying their culture was dead. But finally, we ended up really being a group of kids that could go from school to school and talk about who they were. That's a long time ago. And it was the first time they had these assemblies, and we would go in and talk and tell our stories. That's a long time ago. And now the Little Eagles, that we're all grown up now, and there is a group called Thunderbird American Indian Dancers, and they give scholarships to textbooks and so forth if you're going to school. So that was my life in Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in an Italian neighborhood. And sometimes it wasn't so great. They called my father Tonto, they called him Chief. But my father didn't care because they liked him, and so he got jobs from them. All of us were dancing at that time, and we were all, well, we were good dancers. And then I started to think about what I wanted to do, and I wanted to dance, and so my sisters, who were much older than me, uh, introduced me to these modern dancers. And that's where I started to really move. Uh, and it's very interesting because I kept it really separate. Native dancing was one thing that I did, modern dancing was another thing I did. And that's how I separated it. And when I was in dance school, I remember one of the teachers saying, "Oh, I've been to the green corn dance," and I got really excited. And she says, "Oh, it was so boring," you know. And I looked at her like, the green corn dance was boring. How how could that be? And I stopped talking to her. There was no point of talking to someone who thought native dancing was boring. So uh, then from there, I, learned all sorts of different dance dance methods and studied with different people. And from there, I went into acting, and I was part of a group called Open Theater. And I think what happened was that in Open Theater, uh, his name was Joe Chaikin, the director of Open Theater, and he wanted to tell stories, and he started talking about stories. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. There was nothing strange about this. There was nothing strange about telling a story. I knew how to tell a story. And if you think about it, these are the stories from under the kitchen table, the ones that you're not supposed to hear as a kid. These are the stories that your mother, your father, your uncles, and the people that came in to stay with us. These are those stories. And I got up and I told stories, and they said, "Oh, Muriel, you're such a great storyteller." And I thought to myself, "Oh yeah, I can understand stories. I understand them from my toenails up." So I and when I left, I was an actress, and I was a mover, and I still kept it very separate, especially when a teacher could say to you, "It's boring." So when I started my own group, and I started my own group because I was doing these stories, and I had a a very best friend that I grew up with, and she was Hopi and Ho Chunk, and she was a beautiful weaver, and she wanted to tell Spiderwoman stories, creation stories. And I, at that time, just came back from a Sundance, and there was a woman that wasn't native, and so we started to tell these stories, and we were telling the stories. I put um, Josephine Mopsy Tarrant. I put her on these large cubes, wooden cubes, and I lowered down her finger weaving, and she told the stories as she started to finger weave. And the other woman had a dream about making love to Jesus Christ, and I had a story about talking to a butterfly. And I put this film across that was a river. So we were on two sides of this river, and Josie was up on these stools. And it was the first time I ever really thought about story weaving. These were important stories to us. We were really talking from, our belly buttons of who we were and how we thought about it. And it was amazing because we started to feel the breath. And we started to hear when someone repeated things a number of times that we could repeat. And I think it was the first time we really started to story weave. So what happened was my best friend passed away. And I was so taken by those Spiderwoman stories. So because of that, I named this group that I was trying to get together. I named the group Spiderwoman in honor of Josephine. And that's how Spiderwoman started. Now, we've been together since 1975. People have passed, people have gone in and out, but I had my two other sisters there also. So now we are over 46 years old. That's a long time to have a group. So from there, I started to think about women. And I knew that I wanted a group that was women. And what was happening to women were not great. In a revolution, a woman is equal. That was not happening. And it was the beginning of Native revolution in the States. And I was upset that women were being beaten, women were being raped, and walking down the street and the way men talk to you. And I was and this was the beginning of feminism. And I really felt, I was so angry that I really had to think about what I wanted to do. So I collected these women, and I had to talk my older sister into being there. She said things like, "Oh, you're so avant-garde, though. You stand on your head and all that. I can't do that." And I really had to talk to her. And then I just wanted to hear stories from these women, and all these women of being hit, being raped, really brutalized, and being so angry. I had to find a way of getting rid of my anger and to find out what other women didn't want to talk about it, and really trying to get people to talk about who they are, where they're from. And this was a group that was not only Native, but there were other women in there. So we came up with a piece called Women in Violence. And the idea was we were thinking of clowns, and who did we want to be to tell the stories, and be on stage with, and to really make a character. So at West Beth, which is a conglomerate that has artists in it, we would go from floor to floor to find, because artists throw out a lot of good stuff, and so we got a lot of material, a lot of uh, bells and buttons and all that kind of thing, and we made our own outfits of who our character was going to be. I thought about this. My character, I had a tail, and the tail was one of my daughter's toy. It was a large bow, and I tied it around my waist, and I put like a bustle behind that, and put the other part on my wrist. And I would hit people, and I would say, "It's not me. I didn't do it. My tail did it." And that is how the characters start to build. And uh, my older sister, she did this piece. Um, she wanted to be the perfect woman. And she said the perfect woman can't be brown. So she hid all her skin, and she had long white gloves, and she had a blonde wig and a great big bow in her hair. And she said, this is like Shirley Temple. And she became the perfect woman. At the end of the piece, she took off all her clothes and she had a beige leotard set on, and uh, and she sang, you're my everything." and and my other sister, she said she was looking for herself, so she had this big cape and a hard hat with a little feather in it, and a flashlight, and she kept on through the whole show looking for herself. There was a bag woman. Well, we didn't expect people to react the way we were doing this, but we didn't expect it to, uh, was it to marginalize us. We were so shocked when people were really angry at us. Men were angry at us, and because we wanted to do something that not only showed, but how ridiculous this is. How ridiculous it is to show your penis out in the subway, and the proudness of it. So we made up a song. We masturbated with fake penises. No, we didn't have a real. It was just our hands, and we did this whole thing with a song that we made up, and the masturbation got bigger and bigger. So it was like first here, then there, and then it was way up, and it really shocked people. And I was shocked that they were shocked. And in we went to the thing that was happening was that we were polarizing uh, theater, and we were polarizing, feminist theater, because we weren't doing anything that was sweet and nice, and we didn't go into the sunset. We told it like it was and like it is. And yeah, that was amazing that we could polarize festivals. And one of the things is that we met Luis Valdez, who came in, and he was really, they were already saying, "Oh, yeah, those women are terrible. They'll eat you alive and everything." And Luis came in and said, "Hello, sisters," and we did exercises together, and we talked together, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful. And there was a scout out looking for people that were going to go to the festival in Nancy, France. And they asked Luis, who do you think should go? And he said, if you don't take Spiderwoman, don't take anybody. Very important. So I got a letter, and the letter was from France. I had no idea what it said. And it was inviting us to France, to this big festival, this big theater festival. And I ran around and got money in all kinds of ways for URail passes, for our plane tickets, and we had a benefit at the public theater, and had people like Jerry Ragney talking, and Raul Julia, and it was emceed by Ellen Stewart from La Mama. And I think about it now, it's like, hey, like, how could you think of things like this? Like, we wanted to go, we are going to go, and we're going to do everything to do it. And I think I was very brave. so so we went off to Europe, and there again we polarized the theater festival there. And out of that came a young woman who came to tell me a story of how she was beaten up by a man that was drunk in the streets of Nancy. And when she went to the cops, they wouldn't pay any attention to her. She had to bring her boss from work for them to really pay attention to it. She told this story to me. So I told the story to the audience that came. And when I told the story, I also said, if you want to do anything about it, stay after the show and let's talk about it. So we had a big demonstration outside the cop shop. And it was amazing. Women came from all over. Women came with pots and pans, banging on pans, and they had banners, and we didn't expect this. And it was scary, but it was also wonderful. It was also so wonderful. And then we were asked to, we were going to stay, I think, for maybe a couple of weeks. And we stayed a couple of months because we were asked from all over to perform. So we went to Italy, we were in France, we went to Germany. And that was really the beginning of the feminist movement for us. So that was the first piece we ever did. And one of the things I can't forget is I want to thank Banff, and I want to thank Renalta for asking me to do this. So if I go wandering off, hold on with me, okay? Uh, so every piece that we have ever done is all involved in stories. With Spiderwoman, when we start a piece, it's usually there's an idea. And then we sit and we talk and talk and talk and talk. And sometimes a story comes out of that. Sometimes it's a feeling that comes out. And when we did Women in Violence again, we called it Material Witness. And we used a lot of the stuff that we had in the first one, but there was more because now we were on reserves and reservations, and we really wanted to show the light under the stone, and also how scared people were, how people would not come forth sometimes. I remember we worked on something that was very hard, and we worked on it for at least 2 weeks, and then, two people showed up, and it was on a reserve. That was like also, that you have to really be in there, and you have to be in there all the time. So from that, we thought about other things that we wanted to do. We did a piece. Um, we did a piece on uh, romance and it was a cabaret, and it was called An Evening of Disgusting Songs and Pukey Images. And it was all about love and all of that. We did Lisa Strata. We did Lisa Strata without any phallic symbols, except, yes, there was a cigar. But they were all stories. They were all stories from us. We took those stories, we looked at them, we backed them up, we made songs about them, but all of them, the way we did it is that we really would weave these stories one into another, that one would come out of another. And listening, that was the biggest thing, was that really have to listen to what is said. And and then we wanted to do a piece about growing up native in an Italian neighborhood. So it's called Sun, Moon, and Feather. That's our native names. And we wanted to talk uh, about how it was growing up for my father and my uncles, how it was growing up with my mother's mother, my grandmother. They came from reserves, and then how wild it was at times, when you wanted something and you wanted it so much, but it got absurd trying to get it. And the dreams of these people, I didn't remember until I really didn't know about it. And I realized that my father was part of a scoop up, because where he lived on those islands, the missionaries came in. And with the missionaries, um, they brought in the Bibles and they brought in, all kinds of schools. And they thought it would be better for some of these young people to go away from where they lived. So they took my father and they sent him to, I think it was Jamaica. They cut his hair. A couple adopted him and they changed his name. So his last name for a while was Jim Forster. And he didn't have shoes. He had shoes, and every day he would take them off to go to school until they insisted that he put on his shoes. And then he ran away. He ran away so many times that the foster parents sent him back home. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing he ran away, because if he didn't, he would have been in Jamaica someplace, and he would have been some type of Christian. And I think it was very hard on him. But all his dreams. So we did a piece called Sun, Moon, and Feather, and we talked about how the family and the uncles got together and how they really, really dreamed. And I held that dream. When we first did it, I talked about our beautiful cottage in the country and a beautiful rowboat, a beautiful boat and everything. And my sisters, who were older than me, kept on putting me down. No, it wasn't like that. It was like this. Oh, this, and I realized as we were telling the story that this is a story that we have to really get together. We have to bring this story as one of ours. So this is a piece called Sun, Moon, and Feather, and it's called The Boat Story. So if someone could show it. That's my uncle. That's me. Every summer, my family went to the beach. We had a big, beautiful red and white bungalow on a beautiful beach by a beautiful bay.
Cedar Beach was an old bungalow on a dirty beach off a dirty, polluted bay.
Well, there was a fish house, and twice a day there was a god-awful odor.
My father bought a big, beautiful red and white boat with a great big windshield and a great big motor.
That boat was just a little bit bigger than a rowboat, and it had a motor in it that never worked.
My father would stand at the helm of that boat with his brown safari hat on and his wooden staff, and he'd look out over the ocean. He was going to sail the 7 seas. The only trouble was,
It never went into the water. It just stayed in the backyard.
and every summer, my father would paint it, caulk it, pet it, hose it down, and then all our family and all our friends would come, and we would push it to the other side of the yard.
And then we would pose by it, on it, and under it. And Daddy and Uncle Joe would stand at the helm and pretend And then next summer, my father would paint it, caulk it, pet it, hose it down, and then all our family and all our friends would get together and we'd push it to the other side of the yard. And then we would pose by it, on it, and under it. And Daddy and Uncle Joe would stand at the helm and pretend. And the next summer, my father would paint it and caulk it and pet it and hose it down. And all our friends and relatives would push it to the other side of the yard. And then one summer, it was ready to go into the water. My mother gave a party. She made punch, potato salad, and sandwiches. And all our friends and relatives pushed it into the water. It started to take on water. It was like a sieve. We had to bail out the water. And then it sunk. Then Daddy said, "Oh, well, next summer."
Do I have to do anything here now? So that is what I'm talking about when I talk about taking a story and weaving it and taking the main parts of the story and how we took that and made it into the story. People, Native people come up, they're laughing, and it's part of what they say, that kind of story happened to me. That kind of story happened to me. And I realize that we we are all in the same boat. And I continue to think about stories and really what do I want and who do I want to talk to. And so we toured. We toured all over Europe. We toured in the States. And I started to hear about this woman who was a shamaness. And she could tell she was a seer. But she had all these different people that would come to these different conferences that she did. And I tried to get in free, and they said no. But they were all in hotels. So I got thrown out of one hotel because I was trying to find out. For like $500 or something like that, you could get a pillow, a crystal, and be admitted to this shamanist thing that she did. So then I was talking to the American Indian Community House, and we were talking about this. She's not Native, and who says that's what makes her a shamanist? And I started to think how that's absurd. You don't want to be brown. You certainly don't want to be black. But there you are putting all this stuff in and taking everything, the appropriation of Native people, and making money on it. So I remember I was standing outside the hotel, and there was just a group of us, and we were handing out pamphlets saying, if you really want to know about Native people, come to the community house. We'll talk to you. And these people were really upset. So this big limo came along, and the producer came running out of the doors of the hotel, and this woman gets out, and all these people framed her and were protecting her so she can get into the hotel. And when she passed by us, we all stopped giggling. What kind of shamaness is this? She's afraid of, 10 Indians just standing there. So I started to think that, what do you do with that? So Oren Lyons said to me, why don't you girls, why don't you really start talking and thinking about appropriation? So I think, I don't remember, but my sisters or I discovered this book called Winnetou, and it had this great man and his sidekick, and of course the great man wasn't native, but his pal was, and the pal showed this man all the things. And so what happened, of course, in the story was that he became the best of everything. He was better than his native pal. He was wonderful. And then what got me was that they talked about he had a sister and she was beautiful. She was so beautiful. Why? She looked like a white woman. And I thought about that. That's another ridiculous thing. You know, all these people wanting not to be what they want. They want to be something else, and yet they don't want to be something else. So I took this book, and we all wrote scripts, and so we had many stories that we told. And it was called Winnetou Snake Oil Show from Wigwam City. Now that's a title. And this whole thing about being so beautiful because you look white was something that really got me. And so I did this piece called I Used to Be a White Woman. And I think that's next. Oh my God.
I used to be a white woman. It's true. I was Irish, German. I was Scandinavian. And then, one day I woke up and my skin turned beige. And my cheekbones got higher. And I became a shamanist. It's true, I'm a shamanist. Ooh. Oh. There's this vision I must share with you. I was in the subway on the platform waiting for the F train when all of a sudden I heard this sound. Oh. Oh, oh, and the whole world started to recede. I looked up, and coming towards me was this white light. No, it was not the F train. It was a white buffalo! And seated on top of that white buffalo was a noble savage, naked! Save for his loincloth. His skin was the color of sunset bronze with just a goat. His hair was the color of Lady Clairol number 154. And he wore it in braids down to here. Interlaced in those braids was rattlesnake skin. And growing out of his scalp was an eagle feather, signifying he was a chief.
Really?
He's a chief. It's true, I'm sure. It's true! Ooh, ooh, ooh. From under his noble emerald brown were these coal black eyes. And I could feel the energy going zip, zip, zap, zap, zip. Those coal black eyes were burning like coals. And those eyes seared my skin and pierced my heart. His lips were moving. They were the color of choked cherries. What did you say? Oh, please say it again. What? Say it again. What? He was talking to me. It's because I'm a shamaness. It's true. Yes. Oh! I'm channeling. I'm a shamaness.
What am I going to do?
After holy Indian snake oil, she now has a Cherokee grandmother. Our black grapes down to here. For the fighting Indian. Plastic powwow workshop.
Welcome to our plastic powwow workshop, where you get a package deal of 2 days and 3 nights, plus a coupon worth $100 towards the purchase of
Yatta Holy Indian snake oil.
Okay. Okay, I got to talk fast now. I didn't realize I was so slow. Okay. The wonderful thing about being at Banff, and this was how this next piece I want to show you is called Baby Love. And it was about throwaway kids and how kids were having babies and throwing them away. And so I wrote this piece. I wanted to do this, and I remember being at Banff, and I remember walking and talking about what we felt and how we felt and the feelings that were, So as we were talking about all this, and I was talking about, the children that were being lost, and then we were just walking to, the dining room. And out of it came, I wrote a piece, and then I asked people to come. And this piece was called Throwaway Kids. And it started at Banff, and it was premiered at Banff. And Penny Cucci's in it, and Sid Bob, and it's a lot of people that are in it. And Penny has become not only a close friend, but she is part of Spiderwoman. So this is called Baby Love. What's this say? Oh no.
She landed a long, 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 long time ago.
Baby love, my baby love, I need you, oh, I need you. But all you do is treat me bad, break my heart and leave me sad.
Oh! Cosmos missed her.
Tell me what did kissing you instead of breaking up. Let's do some kissing and making up. Don't throw our love away. In my arms now, don't you stay. Need you, need you.
She was small. She was large. She was smooth. She was rough. She was beautiful. She was beautiful. She was not beautiful. A long, 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 long time ago.
Baby love, my baby love, why must we separate, my love? All of my whole life through, I never loved no one but you. Why you do me like you do? I get this need, need to hold you once again, my love. Feel your warm embrace, my love. Don't throw our love away. Please don't do me this way. Not happy like I used to be. Loneliness has got the best of me, my love. My baby love, I need you. I need you. Why you do me like you do? After I've been true to you, so deep in love with you, baby, baby, ooh, till it's hurt me, till it's hurt me, ooh.
Do I have any more time left? I have 3 minutes. I didn't know I could talk this much. I had so much to say. I uh, I'm very happy to do this because stories are so important, and stories from us are so important, and how to use a story, and how it doesn't have to start at the beginning, and it doesn't have to start. It can start at the end. It can start at the middle, and that's who we are. That we take these stories and we listen to the sound, we listen to the words, and if we can do it in our own language, we try to do it in our own language. And that's what's so important. That's so important of telling our stories. And that if you look at this, I'm wearing a gold lame, but I'm telling a story about I used to be a white woman. Then people would expect us to show up in our outfits. And so it's so amazing that we don't have to do, we really don't have to do what people think about us. Someone said something about why do we use pop songs? Well, why not? We live in here. We live in this culture as our own culture also. And that we should be able to do, if we want to do pop culture, we want to do pop songs, we should be able to do pop songs, And that whole thing of somebody's idea of what native is, that's what gets me. That we can't just go and do what we want to do and think about it in terms of the absurd at times. Think about it how people, got regally screwed, and that how important it is to tell these stories and tell the stories the way we want to tell stories. So thank you for listening. And, Nuwaidi, thank you. And I think I'm over time now, right? No?
No, you actually gave us 1 minute left, which gives us time to welcome everybody back tomorrow. But also to note, yeah, the last time we had our chat last week, I think we booked in a half hour and we must have stayed on for about an hour and a half. So yeah, I'm glad we built in two parts for this one so we can continue the conversation. And thank you for the flag. We didn't realize the chat was disabled. Usually it's quiet, but yeah, once we flagged it, we definitely got the chats coming in. So we'll be saving that out and we'll be talking about it tomorrow. So yeah, make sure if you have any questions, you put them in there and we'll have a great conversation tomorrow. I'd also like to just make sure I do the logistical work, which is to thank the Royal Bank of Canada Emerging Artists Fund for sponsoring today's event. And yeah, I feel pretty good about our time to get today. So we'll close off and continue this conversation tomorrow and hope everyone will be able to join us again.
Yeah, hey friends, come back tomorrow. I would like to talk with you. Some of you I have not seen in a long time. Laura Foner.
Yes, and she's 85.
I'm 85.
Just celebrating a birthday. So yes, it's
New 80, new 80. Thank you.
yeah. So Tinigi McWitch, everyone. Tenset Tawau, welcome back, everyone. For those of you who weren't with us yesterday, my name is Janine Windolph, and I'm the Acting Director of Indigenous Arts here at the Banff Centre, and happy to be able to support today's conversation as the moderator and having a wonderful follow-up conversation with Muriel Miguel, who will be joining me on screen right away. And so, yeah, welcome back.
Hi.
Hi. Well, we had that wonderful presentation yesterday. Lots of birthday wishes I noted in the chat. And from what I understand, a lot of familiar faces. Well, names. I guess we don't see
Yeah,
faces here in a webinar format, but yeah.
yeah. It was fun. It was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I also noticed we had attendance from all, I would say, pretty global attendance. We had people from New Zealand, Australia, we mentioned Wales, Vancouver, seen people from Toronto here, Edmonton, lovely Canmore, and of course, I'm joining from Sacred Guardian Buffalo Mountain, where Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity is located. And so, yeah. And we talked a little bit yesterday about introducing ourselves. We did kind of do that yesterday, but if I know where you're joining from, if you wanted to talk a little bit. I heard the weather's quite hot over there on the East Coast.
Who are you talking to now? Me?
I'm just me and you here. Well, we got people in the chat, but talking to you.
Right. Yeah, it was really it was fun and a lot of things I had not thought about for a while. And just talking about it and talking, I fool around with the idea that I'm 85, but I don't have that long to do everything I want to do.
Mhm.
So I said that to my daughter, and there was absolute silence on the phone. And I said, am I bothering you?
Mhm.
Yes, mother. So yeah, but yeah, I had a very good time, and it was wonderful seeing and talking, talking to those people that I have not seen in a very long time. That was very nice. But I also realized that, wow, we're a 45, 46-year-old company. That's a long time.
Definitely multi and intergenerational. I also noticed a lot of kinship in your storytelling. You were talking a lot about story weaving, but as you were talking, I was noticing there were so many family connections that you were building into your practice. I thought that's a really wonderful place to start because everything you've shared so far, there's always this kinship that you bring to your process and your stories.
And really talking about intergenerational because that's so important. And if you have people that are uh, elders that are not working because people say they're too old, that how do you take care of that? You know, and we found ways of taking care of that, you know, and using what I call shadows, uh, someone that goes along with that person, keeps track in the script, tell them when to go on stage if they don't know, or something happens backstage, but they're there all the time just to do that. And that's important to me. That's really important to me. 'Cause you know, that is something that people don't think about. You know, if you have a working elder, how do you keep them safe and how do you keep them going? It's important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely the intergenerational, the kinship. I think that's also what makes the practice unique is that working and collaborating with family. I know in my personal practice in film, my whole practice has been dedicated to family stories and family history, engaging my children. You see my sons grow up from being,
Yeah.
well, I was pregnant with one. He's going to be 16 right away. And so we're about to go shoot our next film together.
Oh gosh.
And so, I find there's more understanding and people really like there was, oh, that awful word that we often heard back in the day was often nepotism. But really, working collegially with your family, folding them into your practice is so important. And it's really a wonderful way, at least in my experience, of working on your relationship as a family. Like there's so much
Yeah.
depth and importance to that. And I noticed definitely in your practice, you were the song even at the beginning, the powwow
Yeah.
photo, the boat story, like it was constantly coming out in your presentation yesterday.
Yeah. And nepotism, it's a word that I feel like the federal government doesn't understand, that how
Hmm.
we're so intertwined and how one leans and gets support from another. And they don't understand that. You know, it's a word that always shows up in any of our organizations, I would say. You know, so yeah, yeah. You have to make sure that, you know, you're always covered. Yeah.
Yeah, breaking down those barriers. I think, with Indigenous practice, there's often a lot of those things we go through, and sometimes even something simple in my background is like I was working for a nonprofit and we were buying tobacco to give to elders because that was their contract. They respected the tobacco. Definitely, yeah, we had to do the contract that, a little write-up so that we can acknowledge them on paper. But I remember when I went to my auditor one time, and this is not a Banff Centre, this was before my time here, in another organization, and they flagged that because they thought that I was supporting my own smoking habit. And so there was a cultural conversation that I had to have, which I'm finding it's a little more understood, I would say now, compared to that was even just 10 years ago. And so, you're talking about decades of work and so much learning and building on that learning. Like, I guess what
Yeah,
I was really taken with the journey that you shared with us yesterday.
yeah. I asked different people when we opened our show um, to say a prayer before someone to sing, and um, and I gave them tobacco. And the land acknowledgement I gave to our producer, and there was a well, you know, there's like a reaction to like I don't smoke, you know, you know?
Yeah.
And but explaining to them, so you bring them along with you, you know, you
Mm.
do something and then you know you explain what it's about, and you know they see it and they go along with you, and that's important, that they understand. They understand. So there's a lot of things that we have to understand, books and books and books of stuff, and no one else explains it to you, but you have to figure it out yourself. I mean, even auditions, it's like that. And starting like on a film, it's like that, that you have to explain it, but no one does. And so
Yeah.
you have to figure it out yourself.
Yeah, I really like that. Bring them on the journey with you. Even
Yeah,
just working interculturally. Like I know when I was working just in Saskatchewan alone, I don't know if you've been to Saskatchewan in Canada, but
yeah,
we have quite a diverse southern community in Treaty 4 versus my upbringing in Treaty 6. And so even when I offered tobacco up north, because they were more acknowledging, like you have tea with me or you bring me tea, but the tobacco was more of a Treaty 4 thing. So I even noticed, even within my own backgrounds and territories I navigate, there's always cultural differences in terms of what's
yeah,
appropriate. Tobacco is kind of the universal one that
yeah.
now, because of just how prominent it's been, but not all of our peoples acknowledge tobacco in the same way. So there was some learning cross-culturally for me in that way as well.
I
But
remember
looking,
what, yeah.
no,
I
go
was
ahead.
just, one time I was growing tobacco and it wasn't working. I don't know why it wasn't working. And then I got tobacco seeds and that didn't work. And I was lamenting about it to this person. And I said, oh, it's not working. I can't, the seeds are not growing. And he turned the whole thing around, that I must be a bad person if tobacco can. Tobacco grows for me, like that. I have, you must be something that, you do. And I thought to myself, well, that's one way to use something culturally and turn it against someone.
Mm.
Bad person can't grow tobacco.
Yeah, it's like that. I don't know. On Facebook, there's always this meme about people who, if you are allergic to sage, then perhaps you're the energy. But, I often see things like that. But you know what? I feel like there's a lot of learning as well. Like I definitely don't have, what is it, a green thumb. I know I'm not the best at that, but that's because I come from a foraging background.
Yeah,
So everything was grown for me. I just had to go and learn what
yeah.
to pick and what not to pick. And so, yeah, it was a little bit of like cultural learning because I didn't see much gardening up in Treaty 6 area by La
Ah,
Ronge. I've seen a lot of fishing. We definitely had our
mm.
hunters, but it was mostly a foraging based practice. So definitely when I tried to, yeah, I feel bad. I took one plant from Regina to Banff and it did not thrive. I have one tiny little vine. So I can't say I even have a
Uh,
green thumb today.
I I took a plant from Banff, and Deborah was really upset. She said, this is a national park. You can't take things away. I wrapped it up and I brought it back. And it was a lady's mantle. It still grows in
Mm.
my backyard. Actually,
Oh,
Deborah, do you realize that?
and that was from Banff?
It was from Banff. In the springtime, ladies' mantle grows all over, and I took it. I took it from Banff.
Well, and it's still there. How long
Yeah,
ago was that?
at least 10 years ago.
Mm.
At least 10 years. 20, Deborah says. It's 20 years, a long time. But I do have ladies' mantle. It really grows. I
Uh,
just realized talking to you, that's where it's from. Oh
oh,
wow.
it feels
That's
like there's been a lot of memories, just even in some of the videos you were sharing, like just reflecting on things. It's amazing how looking at some of these archival videos that you shared, So that's some of those memories that were triggered for you because we had a really wonderful pre-conversation. And then as you were talking, it seemed like more was coming to the
Yeah.
surface for you.
Well, throwaway kids. It was pretty wonderful how it happened. We were walking from the dining hall to our places, and I remember someone said, "I want to do, um, I want to dance the Tina Turner." She wanted to do oh, oh, oh my God, what is it? What dance is that, Deborah? No, the jingle dance.
Mm.
Jesus. She wanted to jingle dance to Tina Turner. And wow, that's what a great idea. And the other one was talking about giving birth and how she she loved the baby so much in her that she didn't want it to come out, that she loved it so much in there. And that's where baby love came from.
Mm.
Because
Yeah,
how
that
you
was
were
toe tapping.
right.
It's like one of those songs you grow up with.
That's
And
right, right.
yeah.
And I wrote the story. And very interesting. One of the things that I was going to Foxwood, and they asked us to do throwaway kids, and it almost didn't get there because the director at Foxwood said, "Well, you're showing a birth on stage." And that was the swish of the hands, from her between the legs out. And I
Mm.
thought, oh, like this is amazing that they would pinpoint that as not appropriate to children. It
Mm.
was, it was, but we got to do it. We got to do it because I put up a fuss.
Wow. I don't know. I didn't tell my kids any stories about any storks. Or was this, is that what they are? I don't even think we got those in Laurent.
No. Well, my mother was, she was a Methodist, and
Mm.
boy, and she had a hard time because she was also a seer. And
Mm.
it must have been very hard for her being a seer and being a Methodist. And and you couldn't say anything. There were so many things that you could not say in the house.
Mm.
I remember coming into the house, and I I was pregnant. It was, they told me I was pregnant. I came into the house, and my uncles and aunts were there, and I said, "I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant." There was this deep silence in the
Mm.
house, and they went, "Shh, we know, dear. Shh, don't say anything," because they never used the word pregnant.
Mm.
They
Was there an
used
alternate word?
yeah, family way,
Mm.
and she's that way.
Okay. Well, I said portaled to my kids. You portaled
Portal.
through me.
That's right.
It's still technically true.
It is a portal. You can't get away from that. The
Yeah.
family way was like, it was so, and yeah, and in this neighborhood, uh, women really hid their pregnancy. And there I was going
Mm.
around with a big belly, and they had all these things that they wore. And the same way with getting your period, they
Mm.
I was talking to one of my nephews, and he said something, and I said, "Oh, you think that our family would say that? They would never say that." And so I was a renegade, but my mother was a renegade too, because
Mm.
she did all the things that she wasn't supposed to do. She
Mm.
married a man from not not her nation, and
Mhm.
but she also taught me a lot of things. Like she said, if you get a feeling or a sense, or you see or feel something, you cannot tell that person unless
Mhm.
they ask you. And her story was that she was sitting with her mother, And this woman came in, and she was sitting with her too, and they were talking and having tea. And my mother came in. She was like very young, like maybe 6 or 7. And she looked at the woman and said, "You're going to die." And the woman had a fit. My grandmother had a fit, and and I think my mother got walloped. And she said that taught her that you can never tell people anything unless they ask you. You have to keep it to yourself when you see it. And I've done that because I made that mistake. And with that mistake, I lost a friendship.
Mm.
Yeah. So she was absolutely right. But she, she was really, she did all those things. She did. See, my grandmother was a midwife, and my great grandmother was a midwife. They came from Virginia. They used to, you know, on horseback go to people's homes, and so it- my grandmother had all these medicines and all these things that she did and worked with and grew and and then she had my mother, and she didn't know what to do with her. She wanted to bring her up as a good Christian. It was hard for my mother. So, so she, yeah, she taught me. Of course, I was pushing against her all the time, but she really, she could read tea leaves, she could read coffee cups, she could really get feelings from you. You have no idea what it was like. She would shake my boyfriend's hand and say, "You feel funny." It was like, you know. And one time, she got this very bad feeling, and she called up my niece's boyfriend's father. They were in Oklahoma, and she said, "Something's very bad happening to my grandchild. I don't know what it is, but you cannot hurt my grandchild." And then she said, "If you don't know who I am, I can tell you exactly who you are." And apparently, she she described him, not only on everything, but what he was wearing. And her grandchild came home. They sent her home. They got too scared of her. She was good. She was really good. It just it gets crazy. She would talk about vibrations and everything. Before Pete that came out about vibes and all that kind of stuff, she was talking about vibrations a long time ago before that, you know. And she was really a pain in the ass. You could never lie to her. You couldn't lie to her. She'd say, "That's funny."
Well, I always knew if my mom was asking, she already knew. So I just tell on myself. My sister didn't do that. She got grounded a lot.
Oh.
She always wondered, why? How come you never get grounded? I'm like, I don't know. I just tell on myself. And my mom said, because you're getting grounded for lying to me. So the fact that was accountable to what happened, she would always say, okay. And then it would leave it at that. So that was like a big learning for me, like, especially if they're asking, they know.
Oh, I have so many stories about my mother, how she caught me. One time there was this a bar in Brooklyn called the Wigwam. It was all native people that went in, right? And I was like 12, and I looked older, but I couldn't. Oh, all my friends were older, and they were all going in, and I couldn't get in because I was too young. And so one day they I don't know what they did. I think it was the barmaid that said, "Okay, you come in." And so I was sitting next to the window, and they gave me a drink, and I'm sitting there, and I feel so old and wonderful. I'm there with all the big ones. And I look out the window of the of the bar, and there's my mother staring at me. Oh God, that was awful. I had to go, of course, but she said she just knew. And so she came to get me. But you imagine the feeling. Oh, I was feeling so big and great and old. That
Until you
finished.
got busted.
And I got busted, boy. Did I get busted? Mm-mm-mm. Through the window, she was staring at me. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Well, and now today, the youth have the social media now, which I think probably adds to getting busted a little easier because I know my sister went through that. She was just
Yeah.
at the age and it was coming out social media. I didn't have that, so I didn't get busted by social media. But she was saying, yep, people tagging me in posts or posting
Oh,
stuff. And so it feels like a whole new generation, even from when I was, I guess, well, getting in trouble growing up, getting busted.
yeah. Oh, God. I have so many stories. My mother, actually, she was really great
Mhm.
in so many ways. But I wanted to strangle her, especially when she was saying, "That's funny."
Mhm.
But one time, I just got out of the house. I got a job, and I got an apartment, and I was feeling so, great about myself. But I was working as a switchboard operator, Gal Friday, whatever they call those people. And my boss, it was a printing company, and all these printing people, they were men, and I don't know how they knew I was Native, but they said, "Oh, she's a wild Indian," they'd pinch
Mhm.
you and all. It was not nice, and I didn't say anything. I just stayed away from it.
Mhm.
My boss asked me to stay over a couple of times to help with, I don't know, whatever it was, to help with whatever we were doing. And then he would, you know, take me out for supper. And, like, wow, free meal. I was trying to pay rent, and all that kind of thing. So, like a free meal was like,
Mhm.
and he did it a couple of times. And then he asked me if I would be his mistress. And again, I thought, well, yeah, I'd get free rent, free rent, free meals. So I went home. I stayed overnight at my mother's house, and so she was sitting on the bed, and she was sitting on the bed, and she, like cornering me. What are you going to do with your life? Who's your boyfriend? She was just, all those talks, and I was getting so angry, and I told her about this boss who asked me to be his mistress. I told her, and so she was sitting on the bed. I remember, I can see her now, and she was swinging her legs, and she was very quiet. Then she looked at me. She turned around. She spit on the floor, got up, and walked out. Oh,
That's a response.
it was it was something else, I mean, she didn't even pick it up or wipe it away or anything, just
Mhm.
walked away. And the spit was still there. I was like, oh God. So
Mhm.
when I went back to work, he asked me, "So what do you think about it? What do you want to do?" And I lambasted into him, like, "Who do you think you're talking to? Who do you think I am? What do you think I am? Who do you think you are?" And boy, if any guy touched me after that, their finger would be broken.
Mhm.
They would come around, snap your bra and stuff. It was disgusting. And they stayed away me. But what it did was start my whole feminist outlook on
Mhm.
life. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think about it, saying, that's where it came from. You defend yourself, you take care of yourself, you go down fighting, right?
Yeah.
And it just came from her spit.
That's a big statement. I don't think moms have to say things sometimes.
Oh, phew, they don't.
Mm.
Because there were so many secrets in the house, and she was so upset because I would say I don't want to be involved in the secrets anymore, and she would be very upset about that. But that was because my father drank, and she
Mm.
was always covering up for him. Because years later, I figured out things that she said to me because she wanted me to so be proud of my father, who was a very beautiful, you know how a lot of those alcoholics are, they're gorgeous, they have big beams, they know how to get around, and that's what he was like, and she really covered it up because she wanted me to really love my father and be proud of him, I think. I never thought about that before now. And so she would make up stories around him. You know, she would say he came home once and his leg was broken, and she said to me as I was watching, because this was the second time he was into loan sharks now. Yeah, I lived in Brooklyn,
Yep.
right? and and there were a couple of guys that were looking for him, and my mother stopped them from coming into the house, and she talked and said, "I will pay you. I will pay you that money. You don't have to worry about it anymore." Guy showed up every week to get the money. That's how she was, and I remember it because I was so scared, and I remember what I was wearing. Even I had these white furry boots on, and I got a bloody nose, and the blood fell on my white boot, and there was this red spot. I remember it like it was yesterday. And she told me when my father came home with a broken bone, my father, brave and so strong, she said, he was closing up the warehouses and he fell through the floor and broke his leg and he walked home on it. What a strong man. Oh, he owed money. And so like last year I figured it out. Last year I figured out what she did.
Now, years later, you're doing the busting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, I always think of those things of her because we really clashed. I'm the youngest of the group, and she was the youngest of hers. And I think my grandmother didn't want her to marry a savage, as she said, because they were a different nation than she was, and they were not Christianized. And my mother went against her. And so there was, it was in the house I'm living in now. There was a big wedding and all that, and she pushed it. She really pushed it. So it's I have the same kind of personality. You push me, I'll push back. I'll get out of this house no matter what. I'm going.
yeah.
And then I wanted to be a dancer of all things.
And
And yeah, my father would say, well, it'd be nice if I could see you show dancing. Not doing that crazy, of a modern dancer. They were very good. Ellen Stewart from La Mama loved them. They would all show up for anything I was in. They would show up.
Aw.
They
And
would make.
actually,
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, someone actually was asking in the chat yesterday about your allies on your journey.
Oh
Sounds like
yes.
family was such a big impact. And I love
Ooh,
what you said before, have them walk with you. But was there
yeah.
any allies with you that you would acknowledge as
Oh,
that
now,
support?
yeah, yeah. And they were from all over. I was thinking about this one woman, Terry Baum, who was the director of a group called Lilith, and it was a women's group, and most of the people that I talked to were either they were all men group or they were really all women's groups, and I think I met her the first time in Europe, but we got along. She was so quirky, and she wanted me to direct something, and I started to direct her, and and she couldn't take the way I direct. So one day she comes in and said, Muriel, if we want to be friends and friends forever, you can't direct me. Okay.
Mm,
And she's still a friend of mine now. She has was it a blog? She lives in
mm,
California, and she helped me in a lot of ways, and I could just call her up and sometimes just talk to her, and I still do. But our talks are so long that she said, Muriel, I can't talk any longer, But a sweetheart, I love her. That's one. And then, there was Hot Peaches. That
mm,
was an all men's group, and we met them in Europe. Those men were beautiful. You should have seen the legs on them. Oh my God, if I had legs like that, I'd have been Marilyn Monroe. Oh God, what legs. And they tap danced and
mm,
they sang and they were wonderful. And they wore these
mm,
crazy outfits. And then there was another group that was all men, uh, Blue Lips, Betty Bourne.
mm,
They were, all of these were from England. They were from England, and I met them at the Fools Festival in Amsterdam. And Betty is still a friend of mine. And he uh, he was wonderful. He did this one show that he came out and he found this gown that was Marlene Dietrich's,
mm.
and he had this gown on and a tiara, and they brought him out on a dolly. So he wasn't walking; he was just up there looking beautiful with all his hair showing. I loved it. He was so funny.
Mm,
That was Betty Bourne, and I every once in a while I think of him and call him, and he's
mm,
in London, and then who else? Oh, Luis Valdez.
mm,
I mean, he's the one that really got us off to touring and all of that. If it wasn't for Luis, we wouldn't, you know, be what we do, or it would have had taken longer. And
mm,
he was, there was something. Oh, his group. Uh, uh, what's the name of the group? Uh, Teatro Campesino. And they heard we were in town. We were in California, and so, but they thought we were going to another theater, and so they all came in. Like 10 of them came in, and then they realized they were in the wrong theater because the people were so happy to see them. They all got up and left.
Oh,
And
geez, eh?
yeah, but if it wasn't for
Mm,
him, we would not have, toured Europe the way we did.
mm,
You know, and who else? Well, the American Indian Community House.
mm,
I grew up with the CEO there, the director there. We've known each other, and my mother knew her grandmother, and we all knew each other. And she backed me through everything, even if she thought it was crazy, because she really thought I was crazy, the kind of stuff I wanted to do. And
mm,
and part of the theater that we had at the community house was because of Spiderwoman. She
mm,
and our first piece that we really did, women in violence, that we really did commercially, ha ha ha. You know what I mean?
mhm,
uh, it was at the community house, and then we opened all our pieces at the community house. And
mm,
uh, yeah, she passed away a couple of years ago, but she backed me through. Actually, before the 9/11, she wanted me to do stories like a touring guide all around Wall Street section, because
mm,
all those streets and lanes are all cow pastures and so forth. And she wanted me to tell stories, but 9/11 happened, and that was the end.
mhm,
And Ellen Stewart, that was another ally. Ellen
mm,
Stewart, who knew me also since I was a kid and before. She didn't like that I was going with women. She didn't like that. I don't know why. She wasn't my mama. She thought she was. But she would babysit with my kids and so on. And she was great. I remember one time I came in to open theater and there was nobody there, and I didn't know what was going on. And she said, "Aren't you going to the audition?" And I said, "What audition?" She said, "They didn't tell you about the audition?" And I said, "No, I don't know nothing about it." She says, "Wait a minute." She got up, called the agent, got me the audition. Didn't get the part, but the fact that no one told me was creepy. And she looked out, she really looked out for me. And she would yell at me. Boy, whew, she was a hard one. But I loved her. She was really someone that and all these different people that showed up at different places. And there was a time when, women were really starting to, it was the beginning of feminism. And so a lot of them, there was one group from England called Cunning Stunts. And the important thing, though, was that uh, no, they didn't give you anything or anything like that, but they did give you a lot because what they attacked, what they were doing, were things that would make your mind go. And so it was important, you talk to, your actors and everything like, this is very funny. What makes it funny? And, that's an important thing to say. And that, and because I know they did was they did a dance, I think. Was it a dance or a song? And the only thing that they showed was their kneecaps. And they had their kneecaps that would do, do the dance. They were wonderful. So there were a lot of people there, a lot of people that I met and stretched my brain. And at the same time, uh, you're meeting all the men who didn't like what, like one said to me, he was a famous pantomime, uh, very funny guy. Um, and we finished doing Women in Violence. He said, "Okay, so you show someone masturbating once or twice, but 75 times." He was so upset. Bread and Puppet. Bread and Puppet was another one who, Peter, I can't remember. And this is the kind of stuff that would happen to me. I'm on tour, I'm in Paris, I have my child with me, and Peter and his family are all in this very fancy, I was living in a pension some place. And Muriel, my daughter, had no one to really play with, and Peter had all these kids. So I went to their house, and they were living in a very posh apartment in Paris, with red red carpets on the floor and so forth. But they didn't have a stove, and they didn't have things like that. So they were cooking on the floor. So one of the young ones, somehow, and they were cold, so there were a lot of wool. What do you call them? Wool stockings that the kids were wearing because it was cold. It was wintertime, and she knocked a pot of hot water on herself, and she's screaming, and everyone's running around. So I went over and I pulled off her wool stockings, and I said, "Anyone have potatoes? You got potatoes?" And I started rubbing her. The weirdest thing about it, yes, I knew how to do that. Yes, I knew that. But that doesn't make me a big chief Indian. like I was like something wrong. Oh, ask Muriel, she knows. I became the Tonto. I became the Tonto of this. And I remember walking away thinking, that's so strange. I did what I had to do to get that kid, get the heat down from her legs. And
Yeah.
and that I knew from, I think my mother or my grandmother or something. But that I knew.
Mm.
But it wasn't, to make me an Indian legend.
Yeah, it's amazing about like I just think growing up, that was what we were taught was to listen and watch. And often people think that's a passive way of learning, but I noticed in storytelling and in practice how much you actually do recall from those observations. And when they do come out, I notice like probably annoy my kids. Cookham used to do this. My mom
Right.
used to do this. And then you start to, and then I realize I'm starting to sound like my mom.
Well, my mother and I had such hard times together that it took me at least, after she passed, it was at least 10 years that I started about, maybe 20 years ago, that I started to really realize who she was and how
Mhm.
brave she was, and all these crazy things that I know that come from, come from her.
Mm. Yeah.
You touch someone, you don't like the way they feel. Yeah, I don't want to.
Yeah.
But those are, yeah, those are all the people that I think of, and
Oh.
how do they give something to you? You know, how do
Mhm.
you? They were great allies. They were great allies because what they gave and what they thought, and which expanded your thoughts and how you were looking at things. And I remember another one, Thomas Banyaka,
Mhm.
who really, like, he was a medicine man from he was Hopi. He was
Mhm.
from the Southwest. And we got put down by a number of Native people because in Winnetou, I did a send up of ceremony,
Mhm.
but I took out um, a pipe, and even though it was a fake pipe, it was still a pipe, and people, really talked about that we used a pipe, and I was angry about it. So, but my sister said, "I'm going to talk to Thomas," and
Mhm.
he said, "No, it's not a good thing to do because we look at those as really from us. They're from our hearts. They the smoke goes up to the spirits,
Mhm.
and there's nothing funny about it."
Yeah.
And so she came back and we talked about it, and so I decided that I have to really look at this piece again. I have to look at that section.
Mm.
And so we did something that had nothing like that in it. It had all the things that crazy people do when they want to be Indian. So, so we had this big, those plumber pipes, those plungers.
Mm. Yeah.
My sister had that, and that was, and we called someone up from the audience, and we sold him. We were going to make him an Indian. It was so much fun to do it when
Mm.
it was so much fun to do it when the audience is almost all native.
Yeah.
Because they would say, you could hear them whooping and laughing so hard, and and then some of them say, "Oh no, they're not going to do that. They're not going to go there. They went there." Oh,
Yeah.
and we had a whole bunch of names. There's all the names that these
Mm.
people get, right? So we had all these names, and the one that I would push was one called Two Dogs Fucking. And that was the name. And I would give them a medicine bag, which was a brown paper bag with a condom, a Band-Aid. And my other sister would say, there was a beautiful picture of this man. And she would say, hold this in front of your face for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Then what happens in 10 minutes?
Oh, well, we wind down, but maybe we can get to some questions, but finish
Yeah.
your story and then I'll pull up the next question.
Well, that was like something that it, it was so, you know, this, they would, she would put this beautiful face in front of this person and say, wear this all your life. And then we would say goodbye to them, and we say goodbye, two dogs fucking. Wait, but immediately it would turned into um, a native song and a whole other thing that came out of what we presented there. You know, immediately came back to, you know, I looked at her and she said, I'm an Indian too. And I said, my face turned and and I say, that's nice. And I smiled at her as I backed away. And we told these stories after that that talked about people doing this to us. And that's how we turned the whole thing around. But it would never have happened if Thomas did not say, you know, talk about what a pipe means. So, yeah, you make mistakes. And yeah, let's ask, no one's,
Oh, we got one from Nathan from yesterday. And so Nathan was asking, when it comes to story weaving and narrative structure, is this a type of Indigenous storytelling method? And how did this storytelling structure evolve?
okay. I heard stories, and I'm sure you did, and every Native kid did, from my uncles and my parents, you know, and they told stories all the time. And sometimes those stories were stories I was not supposed to know. You know, I would hide under the kitchen table and hear these scary stories and stories about what happened to somebody that came home drunk and other. Oh, I loved those stories, you know. And I would go back and tell my other aunts and uncles, the ones that were Christian, and, and they got my mother and said, "What are you doing to this child? Telling her terrible stories like this." And so I hid more, and and the way they told it, the sound of their voice, and sometimes they would, you know, say things, and they would say it in the language, and then they and you you could visualize the whole thing. You know, the whole visual thing came around you, and so when Joe Chaikin from Open Theater said that he wanted to tell stories, I said, "Oh, I can do that." You know, what's the big deal about that? They, oh, Muriel, you can really tell stories. I said, yeah. From my fingernails all the way, my toenails all the way up, I can tell stories, you know. And so that, for me, that's how it evolved, because the family told stories. The family would sing together. The family would, you know, all of this happened within the family. So it wasn't a stretch for me to do that. And that, so when I left Open Theater, I really wanted to work with women, and I started a women's theater group, women's workshop in the beginning, and I wanted them to tell stories. But how do you tell stories? How do you take stories and visualize it, see it? And I don't mean Mickey Mousing it, like, you know, I went up the stairs, I went down the stairs, you know, not, but, you know, like really getting to the sense of the story of what you have. And one of the exercises that and warm-ups that we did in Open Theater was called Sound and Movement. And you would really listen and look at that person that gave you the sound and movement, and you would try to get it your way of moving and sounding. And And it took a lot of listening and a lot of looking. And that's what I brought into uh, storytelling. And then there was a point where I realized that there are all kinds of things that you bring into storytelling, the sound and the repetition of sound or the repetition of movement. And then I asked people if they would get up and did they see something in that, in this story, that you could repeat. And people would do a sound and movement from it, you know. And then this is over, you know, years. Uh, I started to work in, well, can 5 of you do it? Can 6 of you do it? And so when the sound or the word came, the movement and the sound would come from it also. And how important sound is, how important breath is, how important it is to listen and look. And that was the beginning of really story weaving. And then I found that you could do more than one story. You could do 3 stories. And some way they find what was this Muriel, how did you not let other people something I missed that. How did you?
Not affect you speaking your truth.
Oh, because I have a big mouth. I it was I think it was part of my mother's spit, you know, that I could not be quiet about a lot of things anymore, you know. And with that was truth, talking to other people, talking to other. I remember I wanted to do this piece, you know, this evening of disgusting songs and puky images came out of romance and how I got so stuck in romance and had stupid affairs with, you know, men that didn't mean anything. And there I was, love and all kinds of stupid stuff. And how really looking at, you know, what is romance and how do they suck you into it? And that's, you know, that kind of thing uh, at a point where I could say goodbye. Or take your hand off my knee. Take your hand off my knee. Something like that. And because I was blunt, uh, you know, I got pushback from being blunt, telling someone to go away or insulting someone. Which was so I think maybe that was my truth. I don't know. But I because now I'm feeling these feelings of you see now families whose the mother is not the real mother or the father is not the real father, and there's all these secrets around it, and you see these kids, they're drunks, they're druggies or whatever, and or they don't feel good about themselves, and I really think it's about time we start taking responsibility for what we did. I remember talking to like 3 or 4 guys in this house again, and I was talking about how important it was for them to use condoms. These were like 18, 19, 20-year olds. How important for them to use condoms. You should not get women pregnant, and you have to be careful about that. And they were just standing there, just staring at me like, "Oh God, let me out of here." And then I looked at them and they said, "You know, do you know? I think I just told you the story, did I?" And I said, "Do you know how fast a sperm go?"
Yes, I remember that story.
Right? They will they love to see him, Muriel. You know. But truth can come out of like any place, you know, when you're starting to feel like and I guess that's my mother talking to that.
Mm,
It's so, when she said, that doesn't sound right, you know, that I understand that feeling now, that feeling, that doesn't sound right. But I think there's no easy way out.
mm,
That I use a pipe and I should not have used the pipe is that was the easy way out. But going back and finding another path to it, that was much harder to do.
mm,
And all of us talking it, but it started to grow and it started to really work because we all got that feeling. We all understood what was going on. And yeah, there's no easy way to truth.
mm.
You just have to, open your mouth and say it at times.
Yes, we Cree like to say tap way in.
Ah, yeah.
Wow. You know what? I really wish we planned this to be much longer. We were worried about
I only
filling
talked to
time.
one person. I only talked to one
Yes.
person.
Well, I think we actually did in general hit some of those conversations with your background when you were talking about family and your journey. Yeah, definitely, was we didn't directly answer them.
Just one more person.
One more person. Well, you know what? There's one in the chat actually that would be kind of reflecting on today. So it's from Janet. She was asking, how would you describe native theater scene now on Turtle Island? So yeah, maybe we'll close with the present.
Okay. Well, just the fact that you're here, Janine. Just the fact that there is an Aboriginal department here. Is it called Indigenous here, right?
Yeah, Indigenous arts, yeah.
Yeah. That how important that is. How important to have all these people around and talking to each other. And I find the biggest thing is to really, really talk to each other, really
Mm,
say things to each other, and and work with each other if you can. That that to me is important, and that's where, and have to make sure anywhere in theater with their institutions that they don't try to colonize the little Indian.
mm,
That is the big thing. That we have our ways of doing it, whether it's this nation or that nation or that nation, that we have our ways and this is how we're going to seek it. That is what's important to me. And I think there's a
mm,
lot of people working now, especially in film. You know,
mhm,
there's a lot of people working, and that to me is makes me puff out my chest like that
mhm,
you know like reservation dogs and so forth, and know and knowing uh, knowing these people and yeah, I think we have to be careful that we're not just flavor of the month,
mhm,
and and that we don't swallow a lot of stuff we don't have to swallow, and what think
mhm.
other people think's funny, that that's not funny to us. I think that's important. Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow, thank you for your time and your energy and your wisdom. And yeah, I want to keep this conversation going. I wish we had more time.
One more time. No. Oh,
Wow.
thank you, Eartha. Thank you for saying that. But it isn't
Yes.
only my wisdom, it's the wisdom of a lot of us. A lot of
Mm,
us has been through a lot of this, huh?
yeah.
And, like Michelle Olson, who I just see here, and
Mhm,
how we work together, and how beautiful it was to work together. You know,
mhm,
and how both of us found ways of telling stories and making stories and writing stories up and that I use to this day, but we found it together. And yeah. Well,
Yes,
thank you, everybody.
such a
And
wonderful
thank you for a
community.
happy birthday.
Yes, lots of happy birthdays, and thank you to everybody for joining us again today, and to the Banff Centre team. We have Tambri, Angela, and Byron who are with us on the screen, and
I'm
we definitely
sorry I didn't
appreciate all
see
your
Byron.
energy and everyone's
Where's Byron?
support.
He won't show himself?
Uh, he's being mysterious. He's with us.
Okay. Say hi,
Uh,
Byron.
Thank you everyone for your time. And I guess I have to thank our funders, the RBC, for helping sponsor this wonderful conversation. Thank you everyone in the chat, and for space. This is my first time hosting one of these sessions, so I'm happy
Yeah.
to be able to have that experience with you today.
Oh, very nice meeting you, Janine. And thank everybody for their birthday wishes.